We are less than a month away from the release of the Switch 2, which is kind of crazy sounding as I say it out loud. But in preparation for it, I want to talk about a bunch of games that are confirmed coming to the system that I'm super excited for. And I'm not gonna focus on first-party Nintendo stuff. Mario Kart World, Donkey Kong Bananza, we're getting some great GameCube games, all awesome stuff I'm excited for, kind of easy picking. So I've got 10 other games coming out on the Switch 2, brand new titles or at least new remasters and remakes to talk about that I cannot wait to play on the system. And the first game I want to talk about is actually a bit of a weirder pick. There are going to be some pretty obvious choices on this list, but this is something that I think is a bit of a more unique opportunity for the Switch 2 in particular, and that is MouseWork. MouseWork is a new indie game coming from Nitrome. If you're not familiar with that studio, in the past they've worked primarily on a lot of Flash games, but they have had some higher profile stuff as well. I think probably the biggest game a lot of people know them for is Shovel Knight Dig, which actually, real quick, semi-related to that, I'm wearing a brand new shiny sweater. Thanks to Insert Coin and Yacht Club Games. It's Shovel Knight themed. I love it. So just shout out to them for setting that out. I'll have a link for their stuff down below along with all the games I'm talking about. But back to MouseWork. So this is a new game coming from Nitrome, and the reason why I wanted to highlight it is because one of the new things about the Switch 2 is, of course, the mouse-style controls, and we have a couple games already announced that are going to leverage it. Some of them are doing just the very safe, straightforward, use it like a mouse for a first-person shooter approach. Totally a great call, but I want to see games get a little weird with it. And so what MouseWork does is it's taking that mechanic and applying it to a whole bunch of different mini-games. Stuff where you're having to close pop-up windows, try to draw things as quickly as you can. It's a very fast-paced looking microgame approach to playing with that interactivity and the mouse-style controls. While I'm not always able to get the most leverage out of them these days, it really feels important to me to just have some kind of fun, interactive party game on a Nintendo console. It's just something that makes sense to me. It always brings me back to days of playing a whole bunch of WarioWare smooth moves. I just like having something to do with a group, and this is looking to be the game that's going to tap into that right away for me on the Switch 2, and add an interesting angle to using that mouse-style control. Next up, let's get an obvious one out of the way with Hades 2. I absolutely love the original Hades. For that matter, I basically love all the games that have been released by Supergiant Games. They are one of my favorite devs. And while Hades 2 has been in early access on PC for some time now, the actual full release is happening this year, and as far as consoles go, it is going to be a timed exclusive for Nintendo platforms. It's coming to the regular Switch as well, but especially considering how the original game looked on the Switch, which was totally playable, I'm definitely excited to see how much crisper it can look on the Switch 2. If you're somehow not at all familiar with this game, this is a direct sequel to Hades. It is an action roguelite where you're running through a whole bunch of dungeons. You can pick different weapon loadouts. You're always randomizing what boons you're getting based on the gods that you run into and meet. There's just so much fun that can happen with the permutations in this game, as well as just intentional building you do for your character. Picking favorite weapons, which so far I'm really loving the axe in Hades 2. I just know that once this game fully releases, especially on a handheld like the Switch 2, I am going to soak so many hours into it. Another big name, or at least a big name for my specific taste profile, Bravely Default Flying Fairy HD Remaster. This is a remaster of a game that was originally released on the 3DS and has been trapped there. I got a direct sequel with Bravely Second on that system, and then we got Bravely Default 2 on the Switch, which was good. I didn't really like it quite as much as the 3DS games, and so I'm very excited to go back to the original one once again with a bit of extra work put into it, having the visuals cleaned up for a new platform, as well as the addition of some brand new mini-games that are going to be flexing some Switch 2 features, like the mouse-style controls and a couple other little gimmicks. If you're not really familiar with it, Bravely Default is essentially Square Enix making brand new classic-style Final Fantasy games without calling it Final Fantasy. It uses the class-based system that was in games like Final Fantasy 3 and 5, where you can customize what classes all your characters are, change between them, mix and match abilities, and make all kinds of really broken late-game builds once you learn how to put certain things together. There are certain aspects of the storytelling in this one that can be a little bit frustrating, but honestly just the gameplay aspects of it, how you can build your characters out, and the overarching story itself is just so so excellently done. It is a personal favorite of mine from the 3DS, and I'm so excited to have a new version of it available on the Switch too. Now, the next two games I want to talk about together a little bit because while they are very different, they are from the same publisher, which is Marvelous. And part of why I want to highlight them is not just because I am excited about these games, but because of something in particular they are doing that, sadly, not a lot of other third-party publishers are doing. These are some of the only third-party games on the Switch 2 that we know of right now that are actually true physical copies of the game. Something that has been a bit of a headache with the Switch 2 is game key cards, where a whole lot of titles are coming out where basically there's nothing on the cart and instead you have to download information. And aside from first-party Nintendo, where, yeah, they're going to use their own carts, third-party wise, basically everyone is using them so far. The only exceptions that I've seen are 3 games from Marvelous and, of all things, Cyberpunk 2077. Everything else, game key card, which as someone who likes traditional physical media and, wants to have the actual game on it and not just have a cartridge for the sake of a cartridge, yeah, that's a bit of a headache. And so I'm just very happy that this particular dev at least has chosen to lean into sticking with true physical media. And so I want to shout out some games they're making that I'm excited about, starting with Damon Xmachina Titanic Scion. Now, the name Damon Xmachina might sound familiar. It was a title that was originally released on the Switch, and it's one that I feel like kind of passed by a little bit. Not enough people, I think, really gave it a full chance. This is a mech game where you're building out your mech, picking your loadouts, using different weapons. One of the things that's really interesting about its approach to the genre that's really fun, actually, is that while you do start missions with certain equipped weapons that you've chosen, you're able to eject those weapons once they're out of ammo and pick up other ones that you find. So if you blow up an enemy mech and they have a weapon that you want to use for the rest of the mission, you can pick it up and use it, which is a really fun concept for the genre. While it didn't make the biggest splash, I actually did really enjoy the original game, and so I'm very excited to see a brand new one coming out for the Switch 2. One thing I will say about it that it does look like an immediate improvement is that while I liked the first title, it was a little heavy on the eyes. There was a stylistic choice to just have a very oversaturated look at all times, which was certainly stylistic, but was also just a bit much to look at sometimes, which, at least based on what trailers we're seeing so far, Titanic Scion is calming that down a little bit. And the next game I want to talk about that Marvelous is publishing is Rune Factory Guardians of Azuma. Now, this is one that, to be honest, initially I wasn't that particularly excited for, mostly just because as much as I've tried, I've never been able to get into Rune Factory. Farming sims are just a genre that I have tried to get into every now and then, and every time I pick a game up and try to give it a real push, it just doesn't click for me. And so I was ready to write this one off initially until learning a bit more about it. So this is not actually a mainline entry for Rune Factory, it is a side title. And part of the choice with it being a side title is that, while it does still have farming management as part of it, it is de-emphasizing that a little bit in favor of going a little bit more all in on the action aspects. I had heard a little bit of this concept before, but the main reason why I've gotten a lot more excited for it recently is because, for those of you who don't know, I actually started doing a podcast this year with a buddy of mine, Cameron Hawkins, and he got the chance to play this game at PAX East, and so we talked about it a little bit on our most recent episode, and he had a blast with this demo. And so just based on his energy and hype for it alone, because he and I definitely have some same brain for certain titles, I'm a lot more excited now to get my hands on this one. And again, look, farming sim stuff doesn't always click with me, but if it's less of a focus here and it's something I can just engage with a little bit while focusing on the action aspects, that works for me. Might be a mixed reaction for some series fans, but it's something that definitely has my attention a lot more. Which also, by the way, yeah, I've been doing a JRPG podcast. If that's something at all you'd be interested in, please check it out. I've got a link down below in the description. It'll be at the end of this video as well. It's been a lot of fun to do. We also need a lot more people listening. I'd really appreciate it. Next up, let's talk another remaster with Raidou Remastered, The Mystery of the Soulless Army. Now, this is a game that originally released on the PS2, and at the time it used the Devil Summoner branding as part of its name, which it looks like they're dropping for this one, instead favoring just calling it Raidou Remastered. And this is in the vein of Shin Megami Tensei games. If you've played any of those, you summon demons, they fight alongside you. It's a great time. A bit dark at some moments, but one of the things that really does draw this one apart from other games is that it's not a turn-based party RPG, but actually a real-time action game. This still has RPG aspects to it in terms of how you level up your characters, leveling up your demons, fusing them together, equipping different skills and loadouts, that kind of thing. But combat is done in real time where you're actually swinging a sword, shooting a gun, giving commands to your allies. It's just something that plays differently from the rest of the franchise and stands out, I think, in an interesting, fun, different way. And if you've tried the other ones and you don't really care for the turn-based aspect of it, this might be a bit of a change-up that is more your speed. Another thing that really stands out about the style of this title too that just really gets me personally excited is that it is an alternate history approach. Instead of being modern day like a lot of SMT games, it's taking place not in the actual 1930s, the history is a bit different, but it's happening in a version of 1930s Japan, so there's this really cool kind of alternate setting approach that you just don't see explored quite as much in a lot of other games. Alright, next up, let's take a break from RPGs and talk about what is probably one of the weirdest games announced in the past year, at least conceptually to me, Shadow Labyrinth. If you haven't seen this game at all, this is a sci-fi Metroidvania, very dark tone. You're consuming enemies to gain their power, and it's Pac-Man. The concept of the game is that you have a little Pac-Man buddy, and it is causing you to have hunger and consume opponents to gain their powers. It is such a bizarre concept just to think about the fact that this is technically a Pac-Man game in, a lot of the concepts are there, just a very different spin and twist on it, but honestly, just seeing a lot of the platforming aspects in action where you can turn into a little Pac-Man guy to chase pellets and run on walls, but then also get into the 2D action combat. There's just a lot going on here that, especially for me, who's just a big fan of Metroidvanias in general, yeah, it gets me a little excited. Not to shout at the podcast too many times in a single video, but this is actually another game that Cam did get to play at PAX East, and we had a dedicated episode go up where he just talked about his immediate experiences after. Really interesting to watch if you want to get some immediate, just kind of hands-on impressions of it. But everything I've seen of just the early trailers alone, this is another one that has my attention. Next is a game I probably don't need to justify that much why I'm excited for it, and it's Deltarune Chapters 3 and 4. This is not going to be something that is completely unique to the Switch, but I'm planning on playing on the Switch 2 once it fully releases, kind of at least. This has been something I have been waiting a long time for. Anyone who's been a fan of Undertale and Deltarune, this is something we've been waiting on for a while now. There's just been this drip feed of, Chapter 1 came out, and then years passed by, Chapter 2 came out, years passed by, and now we're finally getting 3 and 4, which sound like they're going to be kind of the main meat of the game. There's going to be more chapters coming out afterwards, but 3 and 4 is basically the buy-in point. The fact that this is actually finally releasing in this year is something that I am just so incredibly excited for. There's so many things that have just been built up as mysteries from the first two where I don't know where it's going to go in these next ones, especially considering how the games seem to be pushing this concept of how choices don't matter, but then there's plot branching in Chapter 2 specifically, and so how is that handled moving into Chapter 3? It's a whole thing. If you haven't tried Deltarune at all, absolutely check it out. Play Undertale first if you haven't yet, actually. Do that. You should just play that. It's an incredible game. Then check out Deltarune Chapters 1 and 2, and then join me for 3 and 4, because this is just one of those games where, especially once we have the complete picture, who knows how many years from now, very likely going to go down to be one of my favorite games just ever, because what we've had so far is just fantastic. Now, one game I've talked about a little bit in the past for some lists like this, just for upcoming games on Switch I'm excited about, and now I can say that I'm excited about it for the Switch too, Professor Leighten and the New World of Steam. Professor Leighten is a franchise that I absolutely adored on the DS and 3DS. It has been quite some time since we got a proper traditional main entry in this game. There were some side titles and mobile stuff, but the last real mainline entry in the series was back in 2013. 12 years ago, so I'm very excited to see it make its return very soon. If you have not played these games at all, they are primarily puzzle games. There's a story that you're going to be playing along with as well, and there is a narrative across multiple titles that is very enjoyable as well, but the real core meat of these games is just, this reminds me of a puzzle. You're just thrown with all different kinds of puzzles back to back to back, and I enjoy those kind of brain teasers. And honestly, there's just not a lot of other major games out there that handle the puzzle genre in this specific way, where, yeah, there's other puzzle games out there I enjoy, but this is scratching a very specific itch that has not been scratched in 12 years. Cannot wait for it to finally release. And then last, but far from released, there's one more. I guess it's technically a remaster, maybe it's just a re-release support, I don't know what term you want to use for this one, but it's something I'm excited to have on the Switch too. Yakuza 0 Director's Cut. Yakuza 0 is one of my favorite Like a Dragon games. I mean, it's not that big of a surprise, it's basically the game that made the series popular in the West, but it stands as part of this kind of divine trinity for me in the franchise, with that, Yakuza 7, Like a Dragon, and Judgment, which is a side game, but whatever, it's incredible, you should play that one too. But Yakuza 0 is getting a new version coming to the Switch 2, it's a timed exclusive, so it is going to make its way to other platforms eventually, we just don't know when that's going to be, but this is a new version of the game that still has all the stuff I love about the original one, while adding some new stuff as well. A couple things we know for sure is that it's adding a new multiplayer mode called Red Light Raid, where you can play as different characters. We also know that we are getting new cutscenes in this version of the game. It's not entirely clear what specifically is being added to the story, or if it's just fleshing out certain scenes more, but I think they've said it's going to be about 20 more minutes worth of cutscenes that were not present in earlier ones, so given how much I enjoyed the original game, I'm curious what's being added here. And for those of you that like having dubbing as an option for games, that's going to be added here. Up till now, Yakuza 0 has only been playable with the Japanese audio track, which to me is the best way to experience it. I just think those are the right voice actors to really get the most out of the series. But if you really prefer having dubbing, you just have to hear your stuff in English, and that's been something holding you back from trying this game out before, this new version is going to be opening that up for you. Again, Zero is just one of my favorite games of the franchise, and it really is the title responsible for making this series much more popular in the West. If you have been thinking about getting into the series and just haven't taken the plunge yet, this is potentially going to be one of the perfect new ways of diving in, where you can really see where the story begins and have some fantastic gameplay to boot. So there are 10 awesome looking games coming to the Switch 2 that are not from Nintendo. Obviously, I'm excited for the Nintendo stuff as well, but it's just kind of a given, I think, for a lot of people. Mario Kart World, Donkey Kong Bonanza, a new Hyrule Warriors, which, I mean, okay, that one is technically from a third-party company, but whatever, it's still a first-party IP. Not to mention all the GameCube games we're going to be able to play again, like Fire Emblem Path of Radiance, without having to track down and buy a very expensive physical GameCube copy. Let me know down below in the comments what games you guys are excited about. There are a whole lot more that have been announced that I did not touch on in this video, because I tried keeping myself down to just 10, but there's a lot more to look forward to. As always, if you enjoyed this video, hit the thumbs up button to let me know. Subscribe if you haven't yet. Also, if you're a fan of JRPGs, make sure to check out the podcast I've been doing as well. It is Party Chat, a JRPG podcast. It's been a lot of fun recording over the past year. And until the next video, I will see you all later.